Uh, Hello, and welcome to Animation Authoring in Unreal Engine. The goal of this talk is to get people up to speed on the slate of tools available in Unreal, running through the standard list of things every animator is going to need along the way, and a lot of things that you didn't even know you needed and that you can only do in Unreal. A quick bio on me. I'm John Fielding. I've been animating for about 15 years. I've worked on everything from previs to final animation and now gameplay animation. Along the way, I've done everything from mocap to hand-keyed, realistic, stylized, you name it, I've probably done it. I've also had the opportunity to work with a lot of different softwares like Motion Builder, XSI, and obviously Maya. The main thing that I've learned across all these softwares is that each one is designed in a slightly different way and with a different purpose. So when you look at it through that lens and you really lean into the way that it does the things that it was designed for, you get unlocked creatively. So I'm going to start by giving you this word cloud. Some of these might make sense or be familiar to you from Maya, like animation layers, viewport, or render. But my goal here today is that by the end of this talk, all these words will not only make sense to you, but they'll make sense in the context of Unreal. So I recommend getting out notebooks if you have them, because this is going to be a lot. So speaking of, let's just dive straight in. Boom. So unlike traditional VFX software, this is a game engine first and foremost. So you won't be greeted by a file that you can just start animating in. As you notice, there is no timeline here. But what I do have is I have real-time lighting and shadows and all sorts of fun stuff. In order to animate, I need something called a level sequence that you open up inside of a level. So this right here is a level. So it's kind of like you inverse the things. You open your environment, then you open your animation in that context. And there's some pretty cool applications to that when you get deeper into the process. But let's just start with the viewport. As you might expect, you can tumble around, you can pan, you can zoom. The first thing you are going to notice, though, is that the panning is backwards from what you're used to. So we're going to start by going into the preferences. We're going to change a couple preferences first. The first thing is we're going to type in invert pan. So this, now my panning feels like normal. The next thing you're going to want to change, probably as an animator, is these big things are constantly in the way, these little sprites. I hide them by just typing in billboard, and these things called billboards here, if you scale that down to 0, they're just gone, and that preference will stick with you. And while we're in here, you also want to type in gizmo, and it's not the gremlins, it's our widget, and you want to enable experimental gizmo and explicit. I don't know why it's called experimental. It's our animation widget. We've changed it from the default one to be more animator friendly. And so now I can tumble around and everything. And I've actually forgotten that Maya can't do this. If you hold down right mouse, you can turn like in a first person view game. But you can also use WASD to fly around your scene and fly up and down and check everything out. Like this character over here. Some animators have actually gotten so used to this that they don't even do the typical tumble around anymore. They actually just like navigate their character by flying around like a video game. As you can see here, it's moving really fast. So one thing I'm going to want to do is probably change this camera speed down to 0.3. So now it's a little bit more tame and I can more manageably fly around my character. So let's say we want to animate her. Well, like I said before, the first thing we're going to need is something called a level sequence. The easiest way to do that is in this drop down at the top. You see the clipboard and you add a level sequence. It asks where you want to put it. I'll put it in animation. And here, and we're going to go test 001. Boom. By doing that, it has automatically opened the level sequence. And you can see the name of the file on the right-hand side. This panel is called the sequencer. It's the interface with your level sequence. It's the description of everything that you've animated in here. So your constraints live in here, your characters live in here, all that kind of stuff. So to animate her, on the right-hand side, let me move this, make this lower. You'll see she lives in this level. So this is echo right here. If I selected her, it would be highlighted. And I can drag drop from the level into my sequencer. So I like to think this is like, it's like making a reference edit in Maya where she lived here, but I'm starting to tell it I want to do some certain things. So I can add to the asset, the animation component here. So now that skeleton is moving and animating. Everything in Unreal is assets, and assets are like containers of a bunch of components. So in here, because this was a specific type of character blueprint, it recognized that there's a skeleton, and with a skeleton, you're going to probably want to add animation. So this track already was automatically made for you. And as you see, I can put this animation clip that I've already made, and if you over drag it, you can see this little dot to show that it's looping. Sorry. And then every asset also has this transform track. So I can get to it by selecting the top of the character or this track itself, and that lets me move her around. Whoop. And so speaking of moving her around, we have indirect manipulation like you do in Maya, but it's actually all encompassing. So you can see my mouse is over here on the right-hand side. If I hold down Control, I can use left, middle, or right mouse to always grab the X, Y, and Z axis. In Maya, you can do this by holding down Shift and middle mouse dragging, but you can't do that with the rotation tool. So if I switch to the rotation tool, you can see that this still works. I can rotate her in whichever axis that I want. Or if I click, it'll be a tumble. If I click E again, it'll be viewport. This gives you a lot of power, confidence, and speed in Unreal that I absolutely love. You can also scale any asset. So even if she had a control rig on her, I don't need any sort of special fancy math to make my rig scalable. You just scale on the asset component and everything inside of it scales along with you. So what I did here by dragging her from the world into my sequencer is a little bit of a fragile way to work. And there are a few different ways to add characters to your level sequence. By doing it this way, like I said, I was making an edit to the asset in this environment. So you can see here's the environment, and you can see that it's been edited in this sequencer. So if I close my sequencer, she's going to go back to her normal size and her old position. But the problem is, if for some reason, let me first show you if I reopen, obviously those edits come back on and she's back here. But the problem is if while I'm closed, someone edits this level and they accidentally delete her, or they bring in a second echo. So let's go find our character, echo. So now I have echo and echo 2. And then let's say somebody accidentally deleted this one. So when I go to reopen my file, it's broken. And that can be a little stressful and a little scary. And you might go, okay, hold on, it's fine, it's fine. It's looking for echo. Let me just go over here and let me just F2, and I'm gonna rename this. Now it's echo and echo, everything's gonna be fine, everything's fine. And I open here, and then it's still broken, and you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. It's fine. There's like data registry between assets in here. All you have to do is right click, and you can say assign actor, and you find the one that's in the scene, and it will connect everything up like you wanted. But again, this is still an asset that lives in this level. So if I were to close my sequencer and I open a different level, so like this one, let's not save any of that. You'll see she doesn't exist in here at all. So the same thing is going to happen. I was using this as a shortcut because that level was added to that level sequence was added to that previous level, but it's not here. I can also find things very easily by the file recent assets. There's my test file. Again, it's broken, broken, broken. Same thing I did before. I can just drag her in, and I can right click on my asset on the top level of this track and assign to connect things up. And you can see what happened here is that's the literal world space position that I was animating in the other world. And it happens to also be the same ground plane in this world. So I can just see her in the context of this level. Everything is the same as it was before. But let's say I want to actually have her always live in this level sequence, no matter where I open her. You can do that by right-clicking on your asset and saying, convert selected bindings to spawnable actor. That gives you this cool little lightning bolt on your character, and you also see it over here in your outliner. That means it is spawned and it lives in this level. So I actually just, even though I added her to the level, once I made her spawnable, she doesn't live in that level anymore. When I close the sequencer, she's gone. It's not in this list. But when I reopen it, nope, not that level's recent files, recent assets, boom. It brings her back in. So she lives exactly in this level no matter what I do with it, in this level sequence no matter what I do. This also works if you're going to be adding shapes. So like sometimes you're going to want some sort of a proxy like a cube, because we don't have a locator yet. You can go into here to shapes. If you add the cube to your level and then do constraints to it, you're going to be having a bad time, because that cube, unless you save the level with that cube, it's going to be gone and you're going to lose your constraints. So I always recommend dragging straight from this menu up here into your level sequence. That drops it at the origin. It makes it automatically spawnable, and it'll always live in this file no matter what you do. So let's say we actually want to animate her and not just put a clip on her. So I can delete this and delete this. So every asset, you see I also have her scaled up. If I look at the details panel, there's these little arrows. These arrows are all over Unreal. If I click it, it will reset to the default value. So now I've reset all those to 1 very easily, and I can actually just set her back to the origin by just clicking those arrows, and things reset nice and clean. So before, like I said, everything in Unreal is like assets with components. So she is a character asset. I can add a control rig component to her. Even if you don't have a proper control rig, everything by default, you can make an FK control rig. No problem. It's just a controller on every single bone, but it does let you animate. So if I scroll up to the top, you can see I can set a key with this button. I can go forward in time. I can grab this arm. Oh, so I'm selecting the geometry. I actually just want to click on this, which is also the button here. It's called select. So it prevents you from selecting anything other than control rig controls. So then now I can move her arm, if I can grab it, up, and now, up and set a key. And now I'm animating, right? This is a good time to stop and talk about this key button that I just kind of glossed over. So this key icon is all over with our animation tools. What it means is it's going to key this row and the contents of this row. So what I love about Unreal is I have no controller selected, and I can click it on the control rig track. On that control rig row, it's going to key the contents of it, which is every single controller on this rig. So similarly, I can expand any one of these and see if I click over here, I keyed just the pinky controller. So all the attributes of that pinky, which you can't see all the details there. Boop. And then similarly, I can drive any of these and change just that single axis. But what's great is once I collapse this all up, I can see all my keys. I can confidently, without having anything selected in the viewport or anything, I can grab these keys and I can move them around. And I'm confidently moving every key in the control rig without having to do a big drag select, possibly miss controllers or something like that. Yeah, it's my favorite way to work. But this is, FK rig is not my favorite way to work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just collapse this up. I'm going to delete that control rig. And I'm going to show you like the quick and dirty, easy way. You have a skeleton with a mesh and you've brought it into Unreal. You can do your weighting in Unreal or whatever package you want. I want to get to her skeleton mesh and make a control rig. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out of animation mode back to selection mode. I'm going to show you the convoluted way. So if I select an asset, I can right click and you can browse to that asset. So that automatically pulled up my content drawer where she lives. I know her rig is in here, but just to show you the full context of what you can do to trace every object in that you're working with in Unreal is I can actually right click on her and I can go to this thing called the reference viewer. Learning this really unlocks learning how everything is connected. So I can see here that my blueprint is connected to this skeletal mesh and this skeletal mesh, because a blueprint can be a bunch of stuff. You could have your groom in your blueprint. You could have a bunch of stuff. So it's not just a skeleton that you're animating. And that's why she has like fun physics on her hair by default. So here's the skeletal mesh for the body. You'll also find a lot of times in Unreal, you might have a different skeleton for the face, or a different control rig for the face from the body. So that allows you to have one shared body rig across every character, but then different custom faces. So rigs are just components that you can add together. So let's make a body rig for her. So first I'm going to right click and I'm going to browse to this asset, which is right here. So to make the modular control rig, it's under create. But another little aside, every menu in here, there's a search menu all over Unreal, and it's a really powerful search. So if I don't remember exactly where to find it, I can just start typing in, I want to make a rig. Okay, cool. Here's my rig file types. I want a modular rig. Let's do it. So this is the control rig that it just made. I double click to open that file. I'm going to kind of move this to the side to show you some of this magic as it happens. So this is the modular control rig. And you can see this doesn't have the hair. This is, as you saw, the hair was a separate skeletal mesh. On the left-hand side is our modules that come for free with Unreal. You can see there's some stuff for quadrupeds, there's some stuff for vehicles and humans, and even stuff with tails. I can filter to just human stuff by biped. In the bottom left, you see module hierarchy. It automatically detected the root bone, which on the right-hand side is the whole list of my skeleton. It automatically detected that and added the root module. Every rig in Unreal is going to need this root bone. It's just the concept that it works around. But that's how you get your global controller that you would normally use in another software. You can see this dot. When I hover over it, this is called a socket. And you can see it's suggesting I probably want a spine module here. So I can take my spine module and I can drag drop it, and it builds the spine control rig. And it actually adds new sockets available to me to work with. I can shift select these. These are shoulder modules. So I'm going to drag the shoulder on, and it's going to add a shoulder to each shoulder. And that's going to open up on the hands is where the arm module is. It's a little confusing, but select them both and arm, drag, drop, boom. And I can test it in my control rig, make sure this is working how I want. And what's really cool is this module knows about this module and is doing some stuff for me for free. So you can see there's the ARM IK FK switches are built in. What you can do in control rig is you can actually pack in functions when you change. So the control rig can be looking for events. Something you can't do in Maya or Blender or another software very easily is when I switch on this global controller, when I switch this left arm, it is saying, okay, that event happened. Let me do a match on the arm. So it is doing an IK-FK match the moment I switch from IK to FK. It's really cool, and this comes like out of the gate with this modular control rig. It just comes for free. This pull vector is constantly moving around. I don't really like that. It's just an attribute. I can turn that off, and now the pull vector is not moving around. And in here or when you're animating, Control-G will reset whatever controller you have selected. Control-Shift-G will reset your whole rig. That'll go to the default pose. So when I deselect off of here, we can add the head. Now she has a head module. We can get fingers. So I can go all the way down to here and just boop, boop, boop. Select these fingers, and you can see how many I can drag drop at once. It's pretty nice. Click, click, and click. And then finger module, drag it on. Whoops, I dropped the selection on the other side. But you can see I already have fingers. If you look at the rig hierarchy, it comes with a metacarpal. We can probably extend this a bit more too in the future with future updates, hopefully at some point, to give like IK fingers, or you can write your own. Like internally, we write our own modules to kind of extend on top of this. So if you have a good tech anim person, you can make your own types of modules that work and make the rigs that you want to animate with. This rig also does have a problem built into here that I'll show you. So I'm going to add these leg modules, and you're going to see the knees are like super straight. So what it did was it actually put the pull vector in the middle of the knee and is causing some crazy flipping and some bad behavior. What's really cool is that this isn't just like a locked out black box. If I go to the details panel and on the left-hand side is the module hierarchy. If I go find my leg modules and I select them, I can actually edit attributes of this module to kind of tweak it as needed. So one thing I know is down here, there is the knee bone offset. So there's no offset and it's right in the middle of the knee and that's causing me problems. I can see in the bottom left here that the Y is the forward axis. So I'm just going to type in 1. You can see it moved them out. So now it's nicer. But it moved one forward and one backward. Well, you know what? I can just use global space. So now they're both forward. Super easy, super stress-free. And now the knee is working as I want. Again, I don't really like this moving pull vector thing. So I'm going to probably just turn that off. You can also do stuff like on my arm modules, I can scroll up to here and find the arm and control select the other arm. I don't want them to be in FK, or I don't want them to be in IK by default. I want them FK. So I can go down here and I can find IK FK, toggle it. And when I add that as a component to this asset over here, it's already added. And you can see the moment I switch this, it's updating live in the viewport, in my level sequence. So as I was building these controls, I don't have to constantly like re-import or refresh my rig. It's always connected and they're always together, which is great. So now we have a control rig. I'm going to save that and I'm going to close it, and I have applied it to her. We don't need this and we don't need this. So it looks like her physics is a little goofy today, so that's super fun. Boom. So I have a control rig. Once I switch to it, it automatically switches me back to animation mode. As soon as you select one, it's going to try to set you in the right mode because that's going to turn on these tools. It's going to turn on tools like this select here. So this here is called our animation panel, and it has most of our tools. So this select button, we're also starting to migrate them into the viewport. So you might see some of these tools are gone at some point, but they're going to be here in the viewport. After that is poses. So we do have a built-in pose library. It works just like Studio Library. You can select controllers and you can make a pose. And let me put her into a pose first real quick. So let me just do something amazing and wonderful. So I got this, boom, boom, and then create pose, control rig pose, you can name it. If you want to get really finicky with it, you can frame it up and you can re-hit capture. You can hit G to hide the controls and recapture and say, yes, I love this. This is great. So we don't have selection sets in here yet, but you can use these just like in Studio Library. You can right click or hit this button so I can select it and I can say select controls. So it'll pull those back up. So you could technically, if I go into this hand folder, I have some poses for the left hand. So I can quickly just grab those controls. So you can use these both as poses, but also as a selection set system. We did actually just add this additive option, which to explain to you, so if I set this pose, it's just going to set this pose. But if I use additive, this slider, I can blend, so I can add that pose to itself and go beyond the pose, which is different from just straight up pasting the pose, which is only going to drive to this pose. It's more useful in a hand library where you can take just a few and it'll just, instead of driving to that, it'll add that difference to your poses so you can quickly mix up a hand pose without using a ton of assets. Yes, so then after the poses, we have, let me make this smaller again. So we have a tween slider in the viewport. So if you're familiar with Animbot, you're going to be familiar with the options that we gave you. In this release, we have redesigned it so it looks a little bit nicer. It's more user-friendly. You can actually set a hotkey to go to specific ones. So you can see here, I've set some. I really recommend you look into the hotkeys that work best for you so you can switch to them as you need. You can also indirectly manipulate it. So if I go here and I pose her arm down, I can, pose her arm down, set a key. I can just hold down U if I select the control, and indirectly, I don't have to grab this to manipulate it. So that combined with my different selections hotkeys, it makes it really easy to just like get into the flow mode of animating. After that is the snapper tool. So the snapper is going to be our solution for aligning objects without a constraint. So if I were to add a cube to this scene, shape cube here. So I can set the cube as a child, and maybe I'm going to go to here, and I'm going to take her, and I'm just going to Control-Shift-G, shoot her to her default pose. And great. So I have motion. It's fantastic. And you'll see if I take the cube is loaded up as the child, and I can take this as the parent. What's not obvious is these gray sections are buttons. So wherever I click, it will set that as the current time. So I can just refine this to only be from frame 0 to 60. I can snap position and rotation. I can do keys only and snap. And you can see it just aligned the cube. I can't select the cube because this is on. So now I can select the cube and we can make it smaller, and you can see it is following. But it's only following on those keyframes, right? So it's not following on the in-betweens because I said just follow the keys only. I often will use this to switch to local space and pull this off in a specific offset, and then say keep offset, and then if it plays nice, yeah, there's a bug with this right now that I'm trying to figure out. Oh, you know what? Maybe this isn't helping. Let me turn on auto key. Move this out. Snap. Great. So if I switch this to all frames, it should work better. So you can see now I have the offset baked out. It's not the best tool. We know we need to make it better, but it kind of works. It'll help you in a pinch. After that is the layers. Animation layers have been redesigned and updated quite a bit. And in 5.6, we've added some more buttons. So similar to Maya, they are now explicit. If you have been animating in Unreal before, there was this old system to do plus down here and do additive and absolute. Don't do that anymore. They don't mix with this new system. So you're going to hit the, so you can select whatever you want, hit plus. It throws those objects into an animation layer. Just like everywhere else, if I click my key button, it's going to key every controller that I put into that layer. We also have some cool concepts like this second button here is called a pass-through key. So you can see here, so if I take the arm and on my layer, I push her down. If I hit pass-through key, it's going to be setting a 0 key. So as if I didn't want that layer on anymore. So this concept goes everywhere. This is a pass-through key on the default layer, which is going to set a default pose. So a pass-through key on an additive layer is a 0 key. So it's a very smart and very cool system. You can mute and unmute your layers. You can animate the layer weight. This is the keyframe for the layer weight. And we have proper override layers. And I'll get into that more deeply tomorrow. So then after that, layers. So then down here we have these spaces. So spaces, every controller comes with a parent and a world space. So like literally I can click parent or click world space on this controller if it wants to listen to me. Cool, 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 cool. Why is it not switching? Great. So that one, world. Okay, cool. So I just put this hand into world space. So if you open this up, you can see it was in parent space beforehand, and now it's in world space. from this frame forward. And it's in literal world space, like it's broken off of the rig. You want to know what you're doing when you do this sometimes, but but you can also have spaces built into your rig. So I'm going to just get rid of these so I have some more space. So like these feet came with some spaces built into them. They have a spine space, a hip space, and a body space. So right now in parent space, they follow the global controller. This is not following the global controller because I put it into world space. So now, boom, 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 right? I can set this one to be in spine space. I can set this one to be in world space. And now you can see that the right foot doesn't follow the global controller anymore, but the left foot follows the body controller. And it is literally that easy. You can do it in the middle of your animation. You can do it at the beginning of your animation. We are constantly compensating and updating your keys and making sure that there's no pop on those switch frames. After that is constraints. So constraints are quite easy to work with in here. They're pretty straightforward. So if I pull another cube in here, shape, cube, boom, scale you down. It's very straightforward. I can just select the, you hit the plus sign, you can add a constraint, and I can say translation, rotation, scale, all the basic ones that you're going to want. And you can also hit the 3 dots to get into the extra features. So I can say, I only want you to constrain the X and the Z axis, create, and then you get an eyedropper where you pick what you want it to follow. So now it's only following in those 2 axes as I'm moving this around. And when I reselect it, you'll see this is the constraint. You can see that when I created it, it created a constraint on the frame where I created it. So it's not constrained, and then now it is constrained. And if I want it to stop being constrained, I can just click the key here, and now it's not constrained anymore. And even if I were to change the pose when it stops getting constrained, it's not popping. If I were to change the pose where it starts getting constrained, it does pop. But if I just select the control and I hit enter again, it will recompute that. It should recompute the offset. So you can also compensate key here, and that fixed the pop. So when you right click, you can compensate keys. And you can also change stuff after the fact. So I can I can change the offset to be 0, maintain offset, or whatever you want. It's all in here. The rest of the tools that we have have been moved into here. So we have a temporary pivot tool. So kind of like you use an animbot. You have 2 modes though. You have edit and pose mode. You click it, you're in edit mode. So I can rotate the hips from this foot corner down here, and I can switch to pose mode, and then now I'm pivoting from there. But it's only keying this. There's no new controller created for that. And then now I have this crazy mess of a scene. I can show you, we have motion trails. We updated our motion trails to be more performant, and I think more industry standard. So they update more live, and in the down arrow here, you can set it to the full trail or to just frames, however many frames you want for before and after. We have different trail styles, like a heat map, which is showing you where it's going faster or slower. So I really recommend you dive into there. There's a bunch of little settings to, I want to show the frame marks. I want to show all this different stuff. If you hover over it, there are also some helpful hints on holding Shift, Control, or Alt to do different things. But basically, when you turn on the motion trails, you're pinning an object. And now I don't have anything selected, and should be able to turn it back on. Yeah, so it turns back on. In this list right here, this is the stuff that was pinned. So if I really want to stop tracking this, I would say unpin all. And then now it won't be pinned even though motion trails are on. And then I would just toggle it. And then now that should be tracking that controller. So now we've gone through these tools. Now is a good time to actually go through the sequencer and go through some recommended settings. So left to right, this is the save button that I use all day. I don't use the save button up here. This is saving like everything. So if you look in this list, there's a control rig pose, there's a level, there's the level sequence. I just want to save the level sequence. I hit save in here. And that'll fire off any stuff that's going inside of the level sequence, like extra exports. So then this browse button, this is also all over Unreal. If you click it, it will automatically browse you to whatever object that was. So this is this test level. So if I forgot where I'd saved it, it'll just bring it up. So it's easy to get to. And if you have a lot of, if you hit this button here, this is the camera. So this will just add a camera to your scene. So it adds it wherever roughly where your camera was. And if I wanted to add 2 cameras, I can go ahead and just click that button again. And you can see this starts this camera cuts track. If I close her down, you'll see I have 1 camera and camera 2. If I hit the plus sign here, I can say camera 2, and now it actually has an edit point. So if I look through camera 2 and I move the camera here, and if I use this button will switch to whatever camera you just clicked on. If I do that button in the camera cuts track, however, it'll show me my edit so I can see that cut across those frames. And then I can go ahead and switch to this camera to refine the position, switch back, and work on that edit. I can trim it, I can move the edit point, all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. And now you can see I have a whole bunch of extra stuff in my scene that I don't really want to look at. That's where this symbol is also everywhere. This is the filters. So I can go into here and I can filter. I personally work with the keyed. This will just filter down to whatever is keyed. There's another filter that some people use called selected control rig control. This makes this look and behave a lot like Maya's timeline, where I have nothing selected, so I see nothing. I select a controller, and now I can see just the keys on that controller. Again, the other thing to note is that these stack together. So if I do keyed plus selected control rig control, it's not both of those and together, it's or. So this essentially doesn't work anymore. You might be like, why is this not doing anything? It's because this is included in the keyed selection. So anyway, I like to work with that because now I have a nice clean sequencer and I'm not confused by the other junk. But if I ever needed to see it, you can shift click on this filter to temporarily disable it and then shift click again to return it. Moving on, this little wrench has a few things. The main thing I've ever used it for is this transform selection. It lets you select keys and you can increment, move things, and scale stuff around. That's kind of all it's useful for. The eyeball. This is a little pet peeve of mine. The layer bars and key bars. So these things in between each of the dots is called a key bar. If I click on it, it will drag the keys on either side of that bar. For me, though, it gets in the way because if I'm a little bit too close, I accidentally just grabbed those 2 keys when I was trying to grab this key and move this key. So I personally recommend turning off key bars. So now I can I'm only concerned with selecting keys and moving them. I don't really need to move 2 keys together like that. And if I wanted to, I would just select them. And I can use control left and right arrow to nudge keys around. This other thing is this gray bar. This gray bar at the top is the layer bars. So what it's doing is it's showing you wherever the first and last key on this asset is. So even if I take this key and I drag it over here, you see it's extending how long that is. It's cool if you really want to move everything around. You see it's moving the keys in both layers, everything together. But it also means you can very easily accidentally move it. And if you were to grab on the end, this is actually scaling the keys. And that's also a bad thing to do accidentally. So I don't like it. I'd rather do those things more purposely, so I hide them. This also makes this look a little bit more clean. And then next to that is play rate. I don't really have to do much in here. This is the keying modes. So key change is what you're used to. You change one attribute, it keys just that attribute. But if you set it to key all, if you change one attribute, it'll key the entire controller. This is the key interpolation. But one thing to note is that if I set, let me turn off that camera. Turn it back on. So if I set my keys to be stepped, so let me close this down and I hit key. So mid shot, I set this to stepped keys. It will continue setting, so this is a stepped key here. So if I set a new key, my default key type is cubic, but it's going to be inserting new keys based on the previous key's out tangent type. So what this means is, like, if you're doing your blocking phase, you don't have to constantly go back in and out of your preferences just to set it to blocking. Once I'm done blocking, I'll set these to spline, and then I just keep moving along. It's really great. XSI had this feature, and I really loved it, so I'm glad that it works this way in Unreal. Next to this is the auto key button, which was not on when I started and has tripped me up a few times. This, don't really worry about it. I wouldn't play with this one either. And then this guy, this snapping in the 3 dots, these 2 things are why, if you notice, anytime I click on a key, it's jumping me to that time. I personally don't like that, so I turn that off. So snap to press and snap to dragged key. So now I can click on keys. I'm not going to be constantly jumping around in time. But if you like that, that's great. It makes it really easy to navigate around. This button here is snapping your keys to whole frames as you nudge them around. There's other features in here that will snap keys to other keys. You can probably just leave all these off and you'll be more comfortable. This is how you actually launch the graph editor. Our graph editor is called the sequencer curves because it's the curve display of your sequencer. In here, you're going to have this is, let's make this wider. So people will often just dock it in the same panel as your sequencer. I personally, because I keep the sequencer collapsed like this all the time, I like to stack these, but this monitor doesn't have that much space. So I'll switch between them. You can see the curves. You can see the built into here, we have view options here to auto frame the curves when you move here. There's it separately, snap time to selection. So kind of like that key one, this is separate, but it'll jump me to the time when I select a key. Maybe that feels more natural to you than in the sequencer. You can set all that stuff. Selection here is our different tools. So it's not just selection. The rest of these are scale tools. So there's this old, most of these are old. So this transform, you move the pivot point where you want to scale it from. I use this most of the time if I want to just make sure I scale from 0. I can select my curves in the bottom left in these tools. I can set the scale center to 0. And it should set that pivot at 0. So when I drag one of these, they're always scaling to that point. Then after that is retime. This is kind of like Maya's retime bars. You click, you double click, you drag, you move. It'll retime sections. I think we need to do some work on it. It can be a little slow and it's a little clunky. Multi-scale is a little funky. It's basically keying, it's scaling each curve independent of each other. So if I move these like this, you'll see pivot points are kind of all over the place because I have it set to first key or average or bound center. It feels like it was like an attempt to do something kind of like Animbot, but we now have like blends, like we have tween sliders in here, so it's not as useful. But our new one, the lattice, is really nice. It feels a lot like the region scale tool in Maya. You click and you drag on edges and they scale, but you can also click on the corner and it'll shear it. And what's also cool is if you have a custom tangent handle and I try to shear this, you'll see that that tangent handle is actually scaling. Maya doesn't do that. It's actually really nice. So then you can feel a little bit more free to set custom angles on your handles and know that they will scale just fine. So go back to selection. Now you have your normal value and time and value boxes. This will constrict your axis of movement to just Y or X. I set it to Y. We also recently just added, if you hold down Shift and middle mouse, you can break it to go in X. So this way I can just confidently just click and drag on keys and I know I'm only changing the value unless I explicitly want to change the time. And speaking of that, if I hit Control left or Control right bracket, it's going to select all the keys from my current time to that side. And then Control left and right arrow will nudge them. This works both here in sequencer curves and in the sequencer. It's a really great way to just quickly move stuff around. These are the same settings as we saw in the sequencer. Our blend sliders, like I said before, but we also have them in the viewport, but also in the graph editor. And both of them can be indirectly manipulated. And the hotkeys will just change the one that you're in. And if you want to do overshoots, that's what this icon is. After this is the key type, the tangent types. One thing that is different from Maya is you can set a weighted tangent on a single key in the middle of your curve, where in Maya it is the whole curve is weighted tangents or not. Typically, I only really use this on camera animation, but it's kind of nifty that you can do just a single key in your curve. And off screen, you'll see these. This is like if your viewport's not big enough, you'll see this little what we call hamburger menu. It'll open up the extra buttons. So here's where you would set the cycling. If you had an Euler issue, you could select your curves, and there's just an Euler filter button that'll try to fix that for you. Nice and easy. And then there's extra filters inside of the filter option, such as baking. So you can bake to a specific interval if you want. These two, the Fourier and Gaussian, are kind of stuff that you would be running on mocap. So like I used to love using the Butterworth filter. Then there's Simplify, Reduce, and Smart Snap. This is also, Smart Snap is available in the right-click menu here, right there, and Control H by default. What that's going to do is if your keys are on subframes, it will sample the nearest whole frame and set a key, as opposed to moving this value, which could actually shift a pose. It's going to just be setting the key on that nearest whole frame and then deleting this, basically. So it keeps better curve integrity when you are snapping keys that have been on subframes. Previous to 5.6, we didn't have this as an option. So 5.6, we now have this thing called Quick Render. In order to get it, you have to hit Edit and then go to Plugins and type in Movie Render Q. When you enable it, it's going to ask you to restart Unreal. And when you do, it will add this button to the top of your viewport. And what's really cool is, so in this button, by default, it'll have Quick Render Set. Movie Render Q is the legacy version. It's a little bit clunkier, and it's not animator friendly. But so for animators, this is going to be your Play Blast go-to. The options in here are really cool. So current sequence, let me make sure that this is a shorter sequence so that it plays a little bit better. You can set the in and out points with these green and red bars down here. And let me clear the selection range. So you can see here, I just have my normal viewport that I'm working in. This first option is current sequence. So it's going to play blast based on the camera cuts sequence. So this option is going to be like Maya viewport, where it's going to just play blast whatever I'm looking at in the viewport. But before I do any of these things, I need to go into the quick render settings and check some stuff first. So this default graph, you're going to want to double click on it, because by default, it's rendering out a JPEG sequence. And that's not really what we want as animators. We're lazy. We don't want to have to then compile it. So off this deferred renderer, it's really easy. You just drag this pin down. You start typing in MP4, and then you get this option here. Then you drag that pin up to here. So now you're bypassing the JPEG sequence. It's going from the renderer into H.264 into your output. So you save that. Then you have the options for what are you going to do when you're done with the play blast. Do you want it to play what you just rendered, or do you want to open the directory, or do you want it to do nothing? So you can tell it what you want there. This is going to access the settings. So this is going to jump you here where you can say H.264 movies need to be played in this specific viewer if you really wanted. After that, you can tell it if you really wanted to play blast a specific range, but typically you're just going to do playback range. And if you wanted to override the output directory, you can do that. So here. So now I can fire it off by clicking this button, but really once all the settings are done, I just click the button here and it pops it up. Sometimes it'll have to compile, but that should only happen once per UE session, and then it'll do the render. But you can see how I didn't have my cameras selected. I was looking through my viewport. So that was automatically rendering my camera cuts track, even though I didn't have it active, because it's set to current sequence, which means you no longer have to accidentally play blast your viewport when you're trying to kick out your shot for a review. But obviously, if you wanted to, you can click this, and then now it's going to render just what I'm looking at in my viewport, which looks absolutely fantastic. I promise you, when I've practiced this before, it did not look this bad. But yeah, so that's kind of it for today. There's a lot of stuff in here. My favorite thing about animating in Unreal is that it's so stress-free. So yes, it's most of the time running at real time. But the biggest thing is like how easy it is to switch something to a world space, which I do all the time. I don't need a locator now to do that. If I needed to make a custom space, if I had her hand in IK, now I'm getting off into tangents, but if I had her, where is it? If I had her arm in IK, so if I wanted this tiny hand to follow her head, I don't have that as a space option. You can actually always add any space you need. So I can just hit this plus sign and I can type in head, and I can pick either the head bone or the head controller. So the head bone down here. And now that's just an option in my list. So I can just click it, and now that hand is following the head. And I didn't have to kick it back to rigging to request this extra space that I only need in one shot. Like there's a lot of stuff in here that's just so easy and stress-free. I get to just focus on animating and not have to worry about, oh, I forgot to do my constraint setup before I did this shot. You can just add it mid-flow. We're compensating your keys. You can animate things that are constrained. It's just very easy and nice. So in my talk tomorrow, I'll dive more into the actual animation process and dive deeper into each of these tools and how I use them on a daily method. But yeah, thanks for coming. And hopefully this was helpful. And now hopefully these words make a little bit more sense when I say control rig or transform track, or the concept of selecting, moving, and adding and removing keys, like how I can just select them in that sequencer and just move them without having to select a single controller. And thanks for coming.